everybody. Welcome to HR Intuitive Institute. I am just taking a moment to let Instagram know that we are on and we are live. Excuse me. You know, the only downside about Wednesdays, and this is why I really want to transition away from doing HR Intuitive Institute on Wednesdays, is because 1 o'clock is the only time in my schedule that I can do a voice lesson. So I've started singing again, at least working on my voice, but it pays off in so many great other kind of dividends. And so that is Wednesdays at 1 o'clock, which means I sing for half an hour, and now I'm hopping on with you. So my voice is going to have this real nice, sexy raspiness to it. I hear it. Don't know if you do, but I do. And then on top of that, after I'm finished with you, I go to the college to teach for not one, but 2 classes. And depending on the type, sometimes that's lecturing for up to, I guess, was that almost 3 hours? So Mondays and Wednesdays are my big teaching days. And so trying to figure out when's a good time to chat with all of you. Fridays seem to be working well because I've been working from home, and I like filming these at my home studio, which is where we're at, and I'm really pumped that this space is coming together and I can really focus on just being with all of you. And I'm so grateful that those of you that are able to join me live today for this very special midday edition of the HRart Intuitive Institute. I really struggled with this idea of just bailing this week and using the scheduling conflict as an excuse to not do HR Intuitive Institute. But for all of you who know, the way that we create the lessons that we will be doing weekly, I use an intuitive card deck that kind of lays out the framework, and then I look at what's happening in my life to generate the content for that episode. So, you know, I've always envisioned that this show is all about lessons while I'm learning them live in real time with all of you. That was part of the magic that was on the podcast, which the podcast is transforming and evolving and becoming what it needs to be. But I also heard very heavily that, you know, it's comforting when you know that you're not alone on your growth journey. And it's comforting for me to know I'm not alone on my growth journey. And so I want to make sure that I show up and do that. I mean, that's one of the big things about my journey is my work, and being able to share all of that with you. And so that's what I hope to achieve on HR Intuitive Institute. I look forward to seeing how it evolves, and I'm sure without a doubt, because literally 2 weeks ago I was filming an episode for the podcast, and I've been getting the privilege of connecting with really some fascinating individuals that I would have never had any reason to meet or talk to, except for the fact that I have a podcast and we have something common in our work and wanting to share with my listeners. And so I get to talk to them. And 2 weeks ago, I got to have essentially a little mini coaching session with Jeff Harry, who's a fantastic coach. And it was amazing and nerve-wracking to be coached live on a podcast. Now I know that's not broadcast live like this is live, but what it took me back to is I think 2 or 3 years ago when we did the Gentleman's Architecture Conference. My counterpart in that conference, Tony Hernandez, we did weekly live calls of lessons and showing the power of reflection. And I really got a lot out of those sessions because they were mini coaching sessions with Tony. So maybe there's a completely selfish piece to that. But I really, really enjoyed that aspect. And I miss that. And I hope that that's in the evolution of what's to come for HR Intuitive Institute, is bringing on other practitioners to show you and share their expertise with all of you. So, but yeah, there's a couple things we got to work out first, like finding the time when we can all come together, me committing to a time so that you can find me and we can all chat. So long kind of story to get to this place of this episode and it being absolutely necessary that I share it with you this week. In fact, I wanted to share it earlier this week and had contemplating going live. And then I thought to myself, no, this is the true intent of HR Intuitive Institute. This is why HR Intuitive Institute was created, is to share these types of lessons. So let's get to it. We know it's lesson number 69. It's called Lost in Emotions. I asked several questions in the HR, the Heart Center community pages on LinkedIn and Facebook, asking, do you have a tendency to get lost in your emotions during certain situations? And there is a situation that recently happened. Once again, I think it's a testament to my growth on the way that I reacted, because in the past, the way that I would react would be very, very different. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about this book here. So the book is HR Intuitive. It's my newest book that came out at the end of September. It's been finished since August. And this is the first book that I've released that hasn't kind of gone through a certain set of steps that I've had. And the reason why is I really am very passionate about this book and really felt that I needed to get it out to the world. I needed to do exert as much effort as I possibly could and resources to get this out to the world. So I partnered with an organization to see if we could work together to help market and formalize a true launch strategy for this book. That strategy fell a little flat for reasons that I'm really not going to put blame on that other organization or even myself. When I look at the events, which aren't really important to this lesson, but when I look at the events of what occurred that resulted in the lack of a launch happening, they are events that no one could have predicted and nobody could have really planned for. And it was just kind of the cards that we were dealt and deciding how we're going to move forward. So if you haven't been watching, long story short, what basically happened is we had planned to have a launch on September 27th. And for a multitude of reasons, that launch just did not happen. There was some mild social media announcements that's happening now. In fact, I just loaded, I think last weekend, the social media kind of campaign so that it's dropping and kind of feeding all of the social media channels. So you may have seen some of the branding and seen the quotes. I'm so incredibly grateful to my beta readers who were my first batch of readers to read the book and the feedback that they gave, because it even further drove my excitement for knowing that this book is really what I was meant to bring into the world as a result of the stay-at-home quarantine, which is when I did a bulk of the writing. I really kind of got back to writing. What's interesting about the timeline with the launch is that the launch date kind of coincided with being about a week before I had to start writing the next book. So this book is actually a companion book. It's the prereq to the book called The HR Healer, which is really going to hold the thoughts and concepts and practices that I think we need to move towards as HR practitioners. And how do we do that? But in order to do those strategies, to get to those practices, you have to have an intuitive nature that is awakened. And that's what this book is all about. 33 ways to do that. And my hope was that in 33 ways to do that, you could find some way that resonated with you to wake yourself up, to wake up that intuitive nature, one that may be sleeping or very quiet, because we are constantly challenged to provide logic and traditional business strategy. Yet when we're dealing with people, that innate skill, that intuitive skill set is so necessary for us to navigate the people dynamic. And I think because that has been quieted for too long is really what has resulted in us having these gaps in the workplaces, the trends and engagement. But that's not what I want to talk about today. Today, what I want to talk about is that from a timeline perspective, I had already committed to working on this second book, and I needed to start doing that pretty much the week following this launch that had been planned. The launch did not happen, and I am now amidst writing deadlines again. And because of the way things played out, I really need to figure out what to do with this book and the lack of launch. And in fact, as I am incredibly blessed to have people who follow up and check and ask for the status of the book, I'm kind of like, it's out. It's on Amazon. You can go to Amazon right now and look for The HR Intuitive by Samm Smelter. You can find it. You can order yourself a copy. Not very many people are doing that because there was no real official launch. And so, for me, I felt like I tried my best to ask for support and help, to do what I struggle with the most, which is marketing and advertising myself and getting it out to the world. And so when I feel like I found that partner to bring this book into the world, and then it didn't happen because of all these events that were, to me, I truly believe are divinely driven for divine timing, was just a hard thing for me to deal with. And, the first thing that kind of comes to mind is, how did I feel? As I sit there and think back and reflect on lessons that are happening in real life, what emotions, this lesson is all about getting lost in your emotions. What emotions potentially were coming over me that I was getting lost in? And the first one was just sadness. I think some people automatically assumed that it would be anger, that I would be angry, that it wasn't happening, that deadlines were not met, or that the deliverables were missed, but it was sadness. I was so proud of this book. I'm proud of every book that I have done up to this point. So Unstuck You and From Heart to Heart, they have a special place in my journey. HR Intuitive is probably the book that I finally have written where I was comfortable enough with my writing voice, comfortable enough to finally put it out there of what I wanted to share with the world. From Heart to Heart is kind of like a personal memoir of just thoughts I wanted to share and some really cool kind of tools. We just recently reread that on the podcast with the summer reading podcast series, Chapter Chats. So if you're interested in that book, it's free on the Heart of It podcast. You can go back and listen to those episodes. But each book has this special place of me through my growth and my evolution. From Heart to Heart was really about me finding my voice in writing and recognizing that I can write and that I do have an author voice and that I enjoy writing. That was really what that book was about. Unstuck You was about playing with what I thought I wanted to share with the world. Unstuck You is in revision phase. I will just say that for the evolution, because I found the missing piece. Why it just never fully made sense to me. It's still a great book. I still stand by it. It's a great program. But now I know the piece that was missing that's going to make it so much stronger. But the HR Intuitive is the book that 100% every word, even when I read it again throughout the editing process and again, gave me goosebumps. It gave me goosies just reading these words and knowing that these words were meant to be shared and were meant to get to whatever reader was meant to read them. And knowing that as part of the process was why I wanted to put the appropriate resources in place to maximize the opportunity of getting it out there and to have it just not happen. Just the fact that it did not happen made me sad. It was this huge, great sadness. Even when I look at the sales reports, not that I'm expecting that one day I'm going to sign in and it's like, oh, you sold like 10,000 books, but even 100 books. But being in launch week, which is when you're supposed to have the biggest numbers possible, and to sell one book, still incredibly moved knowing that that book is getting to the hands of someone who I know it's meant for. But just sad that it was like this book is just sitting there and the words are not being shared. And then the other piece that came over, and I struggle with this routinely, is why does it matter? I'm getting thrown into writing this next book, and I've already written a couple of chapters, but my writing process is a little bit different. And I guess I'm fortunate that the first couple chapters are a little more technical in nature of what I'm writing about, because I honestly feel like I'm sitting there and questioning, like, what is all of this for? My husband and is very much a total blessing, and I love when he can provide insight on things that are happening in my life. And one of the things that he shared with me is that the books are more for you than anyone else. They will get to whoever they need to get to, but the transformation that happens when you write those books, the growth that happens is just, it's priceless. You cannot put a value on it. And I recognize that. But then at the same token, when you're looking back, you can't help but wonder, like, why does any of this matter if no one's going to read this book? What's the difference between a diary and what I am creating? And so the other thought that came to mind, I'm going to look at my notes because I did write these down. Oh, yeah. Sometimes, so why does it matter? I think the other piece that always feeds into this is that I have this natural thought that the world's like against me. So the fact that these weird events just happened and the sequence of the timeline, and because it literally was like everything was green lighted and then it was just like nothingness. It was this stillness, this weird, uncanny stillness that I can't even describe. Launch day, which is supposed to be this really exciting day, was filled with stillness and silence. And I was left with feeling like I just needed to be with it and acknowledge the sadness, acknowledge the doubt, acknowledge the frustration, which is anger that was there, and not really decide what's next. And I kind of have been in that stillness, I would say, for about 2 weeks now. Even putting the campaign ads in, I haven't really talked about the book. I'm still sitting in that stillness. So what comes out of this stillness is this peace. This, despite my sadness and my frustration, I have this peace that's found in the stillness, that it is exactly what was supposed to happen. My good friend Lyle Wilson, he shared with me about, when you think about marketing, it really is about creating as many possible opportunities for people to get access to your stuff sooner. You cannot force people to take your stuff. You cannot force people to buy your services. All marketing is increasing the possibility that maybe it will get into their hands sooner. And he said to me that the people that are meant to have your book are going to have it. It's going to find them when it's meant to find them. He said that's just the nature of your book. That's the nature of the content in the book. So those who really need it now are going to have it. Those who need it in the future are going to have it. And that felt true to me. And I knew that. And I also know that this book is one piece of a much larger puzzle that I'm still working on and figuring out. So where does that put me now? And how does that even relate to this whole concept of emotions? You know, it's so easy when things happen that we can just decide to give up. We can just decide to give in to our emotions and ride the wave of hurt and pain and anger. And, you know, you're supposed to have those emotions. But at the same time, there is a reason that we're experiencing those trials and tribulations and challenges. They are these lessons that are moving us closer to really, truly what we want and the path that we've always intended to live. And so when you ask me what's next, even what's next for this book, you know, I don't know, but I know. I can feel it. I can feel that I'm on my connected path. I know intuitively, energetically, everything vibrates that it is aligned. And I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. This book did exactly what it was supposed to do. It came out. It's there. It's going to those who immediately needed it right now. And for others, it's available. And so much so, you know, as we were reevaluating the launch, I did not feel a urgency to try to build some grand event. The only thing that I could come to conclusion was that I am experiencing great sadness that I was unable to celebrate this accomplishment with the people that I love the most. And that has always been my favorite part of every book launch, is the opportunity for all of us to come together and to celebrate a work of art that I have poured my heart and soul into. And so we're now planning, how do we make that happen? And amidst a pandemic and COVID, how do we create a space that's safe so that I can celebrate with all of you this accomplishment? And yeah, that's where I'm at. You know, I actually wrote about this lesson in From Heart to Heart. It's there's 5 P's in From Heart to Heart, and the 5th P is power. And the power that I talk about comes from when we can let go of emotion and recognize that in the moment, in those difficult moments, that there are lessons that are happening. And the sooner that we can realize that there is a lesson or a message that's being shared, we can work through our emotions, we can process them without having to hold on to them or suppress them or allow them to materialize into something else that causes a destructive behavior. Am I going to say that I didn't get sad and cry? No. There were tears. There was sadness. There was frustration. There was questioning. But that time was also accompanied by this deep stillness, this necessary stillness and quietness that let me know that everything is legit okay. That this is exactly the path that I was meant to be on. So, thank you so much for joining me for this week's HR Intuitive lesson. This one obviously was one that I am living in real time, and I am so grateful that you tune in and you share this space and these moments with me. Make sure if you're new, say hello down in the comments so I can say hello back. But I will see you next week when we come back at our new set time, which is on Fridays at 10 a.m. For our next HR Intuitive Institute lesson, which will be lesson number 70. So have a great day, everyone. I'll talk to you later. Bye.